This story is told by Katy. The house I was living in was called the Old Mill. My parents and I moved there when I was 14. It was a converted mill that still had a water wheel on the side. It didn't move, it had been inactive for some time, along with all the cogs and workings of the wheel inside. It had been various different mills in its time, a sawmill, a paper mill, a flour mill. It was converted into a house in the 1950s, but the oldest parts of the house dated back to the 12th century. I never really sensed anything when we viewed the house. I just found the history of the building fascinating, and it was a beautiful house, so I was excited to move there. It was about 6 months after we moved that this man first appeared to me in my bedroom. I remember the first time I saw him, I thought someone had broken in. I remember screaming and yelling to my parents, "There's someone in the house," but by the time they got there, he'd vanished. We searched the house, nothing, no signs of him. I was a bit freaked for a while, and I thought maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me. But then I saw him again, about a week later, in the exact same spot in the corner of my bedroom. I remember I was home alone, and screaming, "What do you want?" Still, at this point, thinking it was someone breaking in. I remember scrambling for my phone, ready to dial 999, but then he spoke to me and said, "I just want to be friends. I used to live here. I just want to visit and see what you've done with the place." So I asked him when he lived here, and that's when he said 1874. I thought he was kidding, but then I noticed his clothing. It was very old-fashioned, very Victorian era, in a brown suit holding a top hat. I screamed again and ran out into the garden. Then, when I went back in, he was gone. I was so freaked. I didn't tell my parents because they'd think I was out of my mind and seeing things. The next time he reappeared, he told me his name was Arthur. I always found it strange that he appeared in the exact same spot in the corner of my room. I also noticed he had a lot of bruising around his neck. I asked him about it once, but he looked very sheepish and then disappeared. He didn't look that old, maybe in his mid-40s. At the time, I was going through a rough spell with depression. He started appearing every time my head was in a dark place, and he started encouraging these negative thoughts and feelings. This is when I realized he wasn't just a spirit visiting somewhere I used to live. I felt he had caught on to the negative energy around me and encouraged it to make him stronger. This is when I told my parents. I think they thought it was just voices in my head to do with my mental health. We sought medical help, but I just felt that nobody took it seriously. That's when we decided we needed to move out of the house. The thing was, as soon as I left the house, it all stopped. That's how I knew I wasn't simply going mad or having some sort of episode. When I told him we were moving, he was very angry and told me, "You're mine." That's when the figure of two girls appeared. Every time they appeared, he'd disappear. They were about the same age as I was at the time, 15 or 16. One of them spoke to me. Her name was Mary, and she just said that I needed to leave, to get out, and to save myself from him. I believed her. There was even one time where Mary possessed me. I have no recollection of any of it, so I'll just tell you what my parents told me about it as they witnessed it. I was lying in my bed crying, and they were there comforting me. Apparently, my body went stiff for around 5 to 10 seconds, and then I started talking, but it wasn't my voice at all. I was saying, get out, you need to protect yourselves from him, save yourselves." And then I had a coughing fit and came to. When my parents and I eventually moved out of the house, it felt like a breath of fresh air, like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. Luckily, the sale of my parents' business meant we could buy and move into a new house before selling the old mill. I'm very appreciative that we managed to do that, because I was just at the point where I needed to be out of that house. When we moved into our new home, we got chatting with one of our neighbors, and it turned out that he was a medium. We told him about all of our experiences with the old house, and he offered to go down there with one of his medium friends to see if they picked up on anything. We didn't tell him all the details, but what he and his friend found out was amazing. It turned out Arthur was a priest who lived there in the 1870s. He'd held 2 girls captive there, Mary and Elizabeth, and he accidentally killed them. He felt so guilty and ashamed of what he did that he ended up hanging himself. You guessed it, in the corner of what would become my bedroom. We managed to sell the house a year ago. We did tell the new owners that we had some spiritual activity, but we didn't tell them the full extent of it all. We didn't want to sell the house to a family who had any young girls, as we didn't want them experiencing anything similar to what I did. Luckily, it was a lovely elderly couple who bought it, and when we told them about it being slightly haunted, they thought it was rather splendid. I've now become very aware of the fact that I can sense spirits. Even in the home we now live in, I sense my grandparents who passed away a few years ago. I wouldn't say I'd never again live in a haunted house, because I feel all houses have history to them, even new builds, as there will be a history to the land they're built on, just as long as the spirits are friendly and wish me no harm.